Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another news video here to discuss. We're looking at some of the signings from over the past couple of days, some injury updates from over the past couple of days, some more finalists for trophies, plus we've also got some trade rumors involving the Flyers, Kraken, Anaheim Ducks, and the New York Islanders, and we'll go to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Talk Channel. Before we get into, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. I'll never be able to with all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. And don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so it's not all discussed in today's video. Now, as usual, I'm going to start today's video off by discussing some signings from over the past couple of days. We left off on the signings that happened on April 23rd. So we'll go over the signings that happened between April 24th and April 29th. There were a lot of interesting signings from over that time frame. So we'll get to all of those signings here. First, the Seattle Kraken were able to sign left shot defenseman, who was a 2023 third round pick, Caden Price, to a 3-year ELC with the AAV of $865,000. That'll begin at the start of next year. Price looked like a really good player. I was expecting him to be a solid second round pick in last year's draft. He wound up going in the third round to the Kraken, which I think was a little bit of a steal. Last year, during his draft year, Price had 5 goals, 40 points in 65 games. Was a pretty good player there over in the WHL. This year had 13 goals and 55 points in 62 games. So a little bit less games played, but a ton more points. Not for a point per game player, but he is a defenseman, so pretty good stuff there for Price, and I think eventually he should be a solid third, second pair of defenseman for the Kraken, so pretty good sign there for Seattle. Then we saw the Chicago Blackhawks sign one of their pending RFAs, and that was left shot defenseman Alex Vlasic. Vlasic gets a 6-year contract extension with the Chicago Blackhawks with an AAV of $4.6 million. That'll be in the start of next year. That's a massive extension there for Vlasic, who's looked pretty good. 2 years ago, he was able to get his first taste of NHL action, put up a goal and an assist in 2 points in 15 games. Last year was mostly an AHL player, also had assists in 6 games at the NHL level. This year played his entire season at the NHL level, had a -4 rating, 2 goals, 16 points in 76 games. And looks like a fantastic third, second pair of defensemen there for the Blackhawks. And I think eventually it should be a solid top 4 defenseman for the Blackhawks. That's a pretty good sign there for Chicago. Is the $4.6 million a little bit of an overpayment? Maybe. But I think that's a pretty good sign there for the Blackhawks. Then we saw the Detroit Red Wings give an ELC to 2023 second round pick Andrew Gibson, who's a right shot defenseman. He gets a 3-year ELC with an AAV of $897,000. That'll be at the start of next year. Now Gibson been playing over in the OHL. Last year in his draft year had 7 goals, 21 points in 45 OHL games. This year had 12 goals and 44 points in 58 OHL games. So a little bit more games played, a little bit more points. Looks like a pretty good player, and I think Gibson eventually could be a solid third pair of defenseman for the Detroit Red Wings. So it's a pretty good pickup there for Detroit, signing him to an extension. Then we saw the Toronto Maple Leafs send 2022 fifth round pick, right winger, Nikita Grebyankin, to a 3-year ELC with an AAV of $875,000. That'll be for the rest of this year plus 2 more seasons. So Grebyankin had been playing over in the KHL over the past couple of years. Last year had 9 goals and 26 points in 52 KHL games. This year had 19 goals and 41 points in 67 KHL games. So it looks like a pretty good player. I think eventually could be a solid middle 6'4" there for the Leafs. So pretty good sign there for Toronto. I think eventually could be a really good player there for the Leafs. And then we saw Pittsburgh Penguins sign 2 of their pending free agents to new contract extensions. First, they signed RFA Samuel Poulin, who's one of their top end prospects, who's a center left winger, to a 2-year contract extension with an AAV of $175,000 that will begin to start next year. Now Poulin has been mostly an AHL player over the past little while. Had 4 goals in 15 AHL games last year and an assist in 3 NHL games last year. This year had 16 goals and 31 points in 41 AHL games, but also had no points in 3 NHL games, so looked like a pretty good prospect. I still think eventually Poulin could be a really good third line player there for the Penguins, so we're going to have to wait and see on that, but that's a pretty good sign there for Pittsburgh. And then they also signed pending UFA player, goaltender Philip Larson, to a 2-year contract extension with the AAV of $775,000 that will begin to start next year. Now Larson has no NHL experience. Last year played in Hockey Allsvenskan, had 2.31 GAA, 926 save percentage in 36 games. This year over in the SHL had a 1.93 GAA and 920 save percentage in 28 games. Was a decent player, and I think eventually could be a solid third stringer or maybe even backup for the Penguins. So it's a pretty decent signing, and they are able to keep him around. So some interesting signings from the past couple of days. Interesting to see guys like Gibson and Price both get their ELCs. Fantastic stuff there. But also good to see guys like Poulin and especially Vlasic with the long-term extension. extension, get extensions, and be remaining with their teams. So interesting stuff there, and hopefully we'll finish up the signings in our next news video. So some interesting stuff there. Going over to a quick injury update here for the past couple of days. Not a huge amount of stuff to talk about here. Thomas Chabot's wrist injury has been updated. He's expected to be out for the next 3 months, so he should be ready, if I'm correct, for the start of training camp. So that's good news for our Senators. Casey DeSmith was clear to play, backed up Arthur Stilaus in Game 5. Should be able to maybe even get back into game action in Game 6. We'll have to wait and see on that. And Justin Brazil in Boston has been clear to play. Not sure if he'll get back into game action yet or not, but that's a really big boost there for the Bruins. And then we saw some other players in Tampa have injuries after they were eliminated. Darren Radish has an abdominal injury, Luke Glendening a shoulder injury, Mott has an ankle injury, and Perbix has a shoulder injury. All going to be out for a known period of times, but the Bolts are now eliminated from playoff contention, so they've got some time to heal. So interesting injury updates there, but those are the injury updates from the past couple of days. So good to see guys like Brazil and DeSmith get back, but bad news to see guys like Chabot, Glendening, and Perbix all be out for the next foreseeable future. So bad stuff there. Going over to a couple of trophy finalists, we talked about the Calder and the Vezina in our last video. We're going to talk about the Masterton and the Norris in this one. So for the Norris Trophy, the 3 finalists are Cale Makar of the Avalanche, Quinn Hughes of the Canucks, and Roman Josi of the Predators. All 3 were really good defensemen this year. I still think Hughes does win the Norris. He had a fantastic season this year, but I think there's a possibility we could see Makar win it. Josi also had a fantastic season helping Nashville get to the playoffs. So all 3 of those guys were really good players this year, and I think there's a very likely chance we could see any 3 of those guys, but definitely deserving of the 3 finalists for the Norris, in my opinion, with Makar, Josi, and Hughes. Meanwhile, for the Bill Masterton, you had 3 players, including Connor Ingram, you had Oliver Shillington, and Frederick Anderson. All 3 were really good stories. Ingram had to go through NHL Players Assistance Program with Nashville. Had such a hard time getting back to the NHL level, but he did, and was one of the best goaltenders in the NHL this year. Also was one of the players who had the most shutouts in the NHL this year, so Ingram was fantastic. It's a fantastic story there for the Coyotes. Meanwhile, Frederick Anderson had to deal with a blood clotting issue this year, but came back, played down stretch fantastic, and then also in the playoffs was a fantastic player for the Carolina Hurricanes, so that's a fantastic story. And then we saw Oliver Shillington, who missed a year and a half due to injuries, finally get back into game action this year and finish out the season with the Flames. That was a really good story there for the Flames, so some pretty good stories there. I'm not sure who wins the Masterton. My guess will be Shillington, given what he had to go through, but Anderson and Ingram are also really good stories, and I could definitely see them win the Masterton too. So some interesting finalists there for both the Norris and the Masterton. I'll probably have some more trophy updates over the next little while to see who more finalists wind up being, but for the time being, we know the Calder, Vezina, Norris, and Masterton finalists. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors from the past couple of days. First, the Philadelphia Flyers. Could we be seeing a Sean Couturier trade soon? Now, there's been a lot of recent speculation, but Sean Couturier has indeed switched agents, and he's now represented by a new agency. Now, for players who are in the final year of their contract or about to negotiate a new contract and they don't like the way their current agent is dealing with things, you usually see change agents there. But if you don't have a contract expiring, which is something that Couturier does not have, he signed for the next couple of years, that usually does indicate them maybe wanting a fresh start. It's possible, it's not a guarantee. Maybe they just want to try and work out something new, but Couturier was healthy scratch a couple of times. It looks like there was a rift between Tortorella and Couturier earlier this year that did not look like Couturier was being favored by Tortorella, and I think there's a possibility we could see a trade. Not saying it's a guarantee, because Couturier is still the Flyers captain. He's a really good player. I don't think they want to lose him just yet, but I think there's a possibility that they could see a Couturier trade. I mean, there was a lot of talk last year that if Couturier came out this year and looked like he was back and healthy after dealing with all the injuries that he was dealing with, maybe there would be a team or two out there who needs some center help who would try and acquire Couturier. And with him changing agents, I think there's a possibility we could see teams who come to mind would be Calgary, who needs some center help. Boston needs some center help. I could see Washington use some center help. There's definitely a couple of other guys I think could definitely use some center help too out there. So there will be a lot of teams interested in Couturier. Not saying it's a guarantee that Couturier moves, and not saying that's a guarantee that because Couturier switches agents he wants to move. But I'm saying that there's a possibility that there were a lot of people who were saying that with Philly wanting a rebuild, Couturier may not want to be part of a rebuild, and I think there's a possibility we could see a Couturier trade. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but that could be a really interesting piece of work there. See if Philadelphia does wind up working on a deal to move Couturier. Next, for the Anaheim Ducks, when talking about what he could be looking at for this offseason, Pat Verbeek did say that the Anaheim Ducks have a lot of left-shot defensemen, and that he's definitely looking for a right-shot defenseman this offseason. On top of that, he also did say that he would be not opposed to moving at least a couple of assets to make a move for a right-shot defenseman, so we'll have to wait and see exactly what sort of a move they pull off. If you look at free agency, they could go after a guy like Brandon Montour if he gets to the free agent market, Dylan DeMello. They go after Tyler Myers, Justin Schultz. Matt Roy in LA could be a really good fit there for the Ducks. You got a couple of other interesting right-shot defensemen such as Alex Carrier and Chris Tanev. If you look at some of the players they could trade for, you got Henry Jokiharju. You got maybe Timothy Logan if the Leafs are open to moving him. I could also see if the Canucks are open to moving him, maybe a guy like Philip Perron could be an interesting guy. So there's going to be some right shot defensemen available in my opinion. There's also a couple of guys who can play left side or right side. So there's going to be some right shot defensemen that are going to be available for the Anaheim Ducks if they wanted to move some assets to do so. And it sounded like Pat Verbeek really thinks this team is ready to take some next steps and at least be a lot more competitive next year. So I would not be overly surprised if we saw the Ducks try and add a top 4 right shot defenseman this offseason to try and bolster that defensive group, so I'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to the Seattle Kraken, there's been some speculation I've seen over the past while linking Joel Farabee from the Flyers to Seattle. Now, I don't think this is too much of a surprise. Seattle needs some scoring help. Farabee's apparently on the block. I've seen a lot of people say Farabee could be a guy who's one up being moved by Philadelphia Flyers. So we're going to have to wait and see exactly what happens there with Farabee and the Flyers, but I do think there's a possibility that Farabee could wind up being moved, and Seattle, I think, would be a fantastic landing spot. I mean, they could definitely use a solid top 6 winger like a Farabee. Not sure exactly what they would part with, but they do have a lot of decent forward prospects. They also have a couple of decent draft picks, so I think they could put together a nice enough trade to work out a deal to acquire Farabee. He's also on a longer term contract, so he's cost control for next little while. So I think Farabee could be a really good fit there for the Kraken. I think that could be a really good trade there if Seattle does pull it off. But we'll have to wait and see. Farabee is sort of a younger forward. He works really well. He's a really good goal scorer, and I think he'll be exactly what that team needs in their top 6. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. I think the Kraken will be in on a lot of players on the forward group this year, but I think Farabee could be another one to watch out for, so I'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, what could we see the Islanders do this offseason? Now, I'm going to talk about this more in our offseason preview video in the next couple of days or within the next week, talking about the New York Islanders after they were eliminated in playoff contention by the Carolina Hurricanes. But I think there's very likely a chance we could see some major changes in New York. Now, a lot of this does depend on if Lou Lamoriello is back as GM or if there's a new GM in New York. So I'll have to wait and see on that. But I think this Islanders team is way too old. And I think there are going to be some major changes coming to this Islanders team. Now, I think in goal they're probably going to keep Sorokin and Varlamov. I know Sorokin did not play overly well down the stretch, but I think he can definitely remain as a starter. And I think he's still one of the better goalies in the league. Defensively, they have a pretty decent defense with guys like Mayfield, Romanov, Dobson, Pelech, Pulak. The younger guys could definitely still fill in as like a 6th defenseman with guys like Bolduc, Aho, Salo, so I think they're fine on the defensive end. But in the series against Carolina, they showed they cannot score goals, and I definitely think they need to make some changes up front. I would think they have to consider moving some pieces. Now, if you look at players who only have 1 or 2 years left on their contracts, Palmieri is going to be entering the final year of his deal this offseason. Pajot only has 2 years left after this year. Lee only has 2 years left after this year, and Nelson's going to be entering the final year of his deal. And I don't think they really want to move Nelson, given how well of a scorer he's been in that situation. You have Horvat, Barzal, Engvall also on long-term deals. But I think there's a very likely chance we could see a guy like Anders Lee be moved. We could see a guy like Jean-Gabriel Pajot be moved. We could see a guy like Kyle Palmieri be moved. I think there's a possibility we could see something like that. I've mentioned in my last video, if Marner's available, if they do move on from Lamoriello and they want to get younger, I could definitely see him go after Marner and try and move like a Pelech or a Pulak to do so. I would personally not be surprised if they move one of their defensemen, whether that be a Pelech or a Pulak or maybe even a Romanov, to try and go after a younger forward who can definitely help in that top 6. Because this is an older group. Besides Horvat and Barzal, their core group, they're really only Engvall and then also Wahlstrom and Holmstrom, who are both in and out of the lineups, who are under 30 years old. So this team is a really old team, and they really need to, in my opinion, get a lot younger. They also don't have a lot of prospects coming up from the system over the next couple of years, so they need some more youth in this team. And I think moving on from guys like Pajot, Palmieri, Lee, and bring in some more younger talent, maybe like a Marner, or if not Marner, then maybe some other guys, like maybe go over free agency, get like a Marchessault or a Gensel or something like that. I think the Islanders need to improve this team, get younger, be able to score some more goals if they're going to have any chance of getting back into the Eastern Conference Final again in the not-too-distant future. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens with the Islanders. But I think their defense is pretty good. I think their goaltending is pretty good. We'll get to more of this in the offseason preview video for the Islanders, but I definitely think there will be some changes up front this year, and I would not be one bit surprised if guys like Palmieri, Lee, or Pajot were either moved or bought out. And I would not be overly surprised if they went out this offseason to go out and get some more offensive scoring help. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. But that's what I want to talk about for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. What do you think about the Islanders? Do they add some pieces on the forward group? Could they move Lee, Pajot, Palmieri? Is there any chance to move Nelson? Definitely want to hear your thoughts on that. Do you think the Kraken go after Farabee? I think that'll be a perfect fit for Farabee. So going to Seattle, so I'll have to wait and see on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What do you think about the Ducks? Do they go after right-shot defenseman? If so, what sort of right-shot defenseman do you think they could go after? And what do you think about Flyers? Do they move on from Sean Couturier this offseason, or do they keep him and try and keep him happy? Definitely want to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, what do you think about the finalists for the Masterton and Norris trophies? What do you think about the injury updates and the signing updates in the past couple of days? Definitely have to get your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk about for today. I'm going to tell you this video, and for other time, subscribe down below. Thank you all for your support, and I will to love you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below, and don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below. So I'll discuss in today's video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So if you check that out, leave a link in the description below, and I can't see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.